Hello, good morning. This is Pastor Larry. I said good morning. It's actually almost noon. It's Tuesday. It's March the 10th. Actually, I should have remembered that. It's my daughter's birthday. How can I forget that? Anyway, it's March 10th, and today is an unseasonably warm day. It's about going up to about 80 degrees up here in New Jersey. So that's pretty cool. Pretty warm, and I appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in. It's my teaching tidbit that I haven't been as regular as I was hoping to in the past, but I'm here, and so thank you again for tuning in. The channel is LShaddai.Philly, and if you want to reach out to me via comment or email. If you want to reach out to me via email, the email is pastor, that's PASTOR LSHADDAI@gmail.com. That's pastor.LSHADDAI@gmail.com. So definitely love to hear from you. Today we're going to be talking about Zionists, or what that name really means. But before we do that, one of the things, if you've been following this channel at any time, you'll find that what we try to do is to have that offer for salvation in the beginning, and this will be no different. One is how do you get how can I offer you salvation? Well, I'm not the one that's doing the saving. I'm not the one really giving out salvation, but I'm introducing you, if you don't know, the one who provided your salvation, which would be the Messiah. Again, people call him Jesus Christ. I call him Yeshua or Yahusha, and he is the Mashiach, which means he's the sent one, the messenger, the anointed one. So his name would have been, like, his last name isn't Christ. You hear Jesus Christ. That's actually more of the function of what he did, or what he was here. He was sent here, the Messiah. So anyway, that's a little more than you needed to know, I guess. But I'm offering an invitation to come into relationship with the Father through the Messiah. And that's what this is all about. My life is about that, because he's the author of our life, and the God of creation. And he's also the God who's eternal, which means, and again, you may not believe this, whether you believe it or not doesn't make it true, but once you die in this realm, that doesn't mean you're done. You will, your spirit will and soul will continue to live. The only thing that makes you legal here is your body. Like your body would be considered an earth suit. And it's why demons look around. They don't have a body, a corporal body. So that's why I'm probably getting all into stuff that you're not really familiar with. But you need a body to be legal here, which would, just like if you went into space, you would have a space suit. You went underwater, you would need an underwater suit to breathe, to be able to operate in that and function in that environment. Well, to live on this planet, on this earth, you need an earth suit, which would be your body, which is inhabited by your spirit and your soul. And your spirit needs to be born again, like the Messiah said. So I would recommend, if you've never been born again, that you want to make sure that, because your spirit and soul are going to still exist once your body is no longer operating in this realm, or in this existence, it will continue, that you want to make sure that your spirit and soul are going to be well looked after. And the way to do that is to make sure that the one who created our time, our existence, the one who created you, that you're in good standing and you're in obedience to him. And so he said you must be born again. So I think he meant it. And so the way to do that is, again, by accepting the free gift of life, which his son provided when he went on that cross, died, and rose again for you. He did that for me as well. So accept that gift and just make him your Lord and Savior. Well, and then you also, it comes with some operating instructions, which is the operating manual, which would be considered called the Holy Bible, the Word of the Most High. And then you want to get around people that are sharing the same experience as well, that are operating according to his word. So we're going to talk about Zionism. If you made that decision, reach out to me. Like I said, and through the comment or email, which like I said, I gave that earlier on. But make sure you hit the thumbs up, share the video, and also subscribe if you haven't been. So we're talking about Zionism, and one of the things I found out about Zionism, and again, I'm not an expert. I'm just doing a high level, just overview a little bit. But Zionism really came about in the early 19th or late 19th century, which would have been in the 1800s. The real term Zionism. And it's like an ethno-cultural nationalist movement. And I shared before that everybody that's considered Jewish may not be ethnically Jewish. When I say ethnically, I meant relating back to the history from over 2,000 years ago. But like, say you could have converted into Judaism, and but that doesn't mean. But so ethno-culturally nationalist, that's a big term, and so it covers people that come from all those different areas. That maybe some may have been religious Jews, and just like here in America, some people consider themselves Christian because America has been for so long been considered a Christian nation. But they're culturally Christian. They may go to church or whatever on Christmas and Easter and maybe a wedding or two or something, and they consider themselves Christian. And then there's people that their family raised them as Christian, but they never made that decision to really serve the Father. And so, they're in and out. And then there's people that are actually really believe what the Bible says, and so they kind of go along with that, and religious or whatever. I call myself a believer, not really. I call myself a biblical believer. I've accepted the Messiah, and so as opposed to Christianity, because it's more of a label, and whereas a believer, I'd rather you see what I'm doing, because it's action. It's a verb, not a noun. And so that's my personal preference, where I call myself a biblical believer in the Messiah, and that Yahweh or God is my Father. And now that doesn't mean I feel I'm better than anybody else, and that doesn't mean I feel that I'm in a different category than anybody else. No, I'm just telling you how I categorize myself, just from my study and all, and also looking at society and looking at people, because there's people that will call themselves a Christian, but they don't really follow the Bible. They may have even accepted the Messiah, but they don't follow the Bible, or nominally accepted the Messiah. And they may nominally have a casual passing acquaintance with the Bible, but they don't let the Bible beliefs get in the way of their normal life, if you follow what I'm saying. Like, for example, and one of the good examples I use is that people from the Ku Klux Klan call themselves Christians, yet their MO, just like you have people that started this country call themselves Christians, and yet they didn't follow the Bible, which is why they enslaved people that look like me, had a passing acquaintance with the Bible. That's why I call myself a biblical believer. Anyway, going far afield. So it was ethno-cultural nationalist movement, and kind of the person that has the most notoriety is Theodore Herzl, and he was the one. He wrote some things and got kind of publicized and published with because of his beliefs, and then they moved into, like, say, 1917 with the Balfour Declaration, which was when England gave their approval for a Jewish homeland. And basically what Zionism means is they believe they have a right to their homeland. And now even that wasn't always set in stone where the homeland was. From the beginning, they were looking at places in America, in the Americas, not just here, also South America, the Jews. Because here's what was happening. They were being persecuted throughout a lot of their history. And so they wanted their own homeland where they could be safe. Just natural desire. I don't, so I wouldn't have any problem with that myself. I want to be safe. Everybody wants to be safe. So they wanted their own homeland where they could have the rules and set the rules for themselves. Now, ironically, they set the rules for themselves at the expense of people who are already there through a thing called transfer. They wanted to transfer so that so their definition of Zionism meant a place that was as much land for Jews as possible, with as many Jews as possible, and few indigenous or Arab people as possible in the land. And so, I'm saying ironically because wherever they were a minority, and they wanted somewhere where they could be safe to live their existence. Now, one of the things about Zionism is it's not really religious. As a matter of fact, one of the things about Zionism is it wanted to kind of put the focus more on this nationalist view and less on, and like a nationalist secular view, and less on the actual religion. As a matter of fact, you'll notice that a lot of Jews in Israel particularly are secular as opposed to being religious. Doesn't mean the religious doesn't have a deal of influence or a good deal of influence, but it's more secular than a Jewish, than a religious society. As a matter of fact, there were, and again, if you go by American people that identify as Jews in America, it's maybe about a third of them would identify as Zionists, as pro-Zionists. And then at one point there was way more that were not just there, but around the world, that were anti-Zionist, that were religious, the ones that went with the Bible, because one of the things is one of their main, components of their belief, the anti-Zionists would be because they believe that they don't get a homeland until the Messiah comes back. Like if you read in Ezekiel chapter 37, where the two branches, and then David would rule forever. And there's some other scriptures as well. So one of the things for anti-Zionists, not all of them, but one of the things, at least in the beginning, was they wouldn't have a homeland until the Messiah comes. And anyway, so what was I going to say? I mentioned about the Balfour Declaration. What happened is England sent a letter to Lord Rothschild about approving in 1917 the Balfour Declaration, or that letter, that England was supporting the idea of a Jewish national home in the Palestine area, and which was interesting because England didn't even own Palestine. Up until World War I, the Ottoman Empire owned a lot of that area. Now, Rothschild owned a lot of land in that area, from what I understand. The Rothschild family owned a lot of land in that area, so they had great deal of influence. But it's just interesting the way that whole thing played out, because England said that would be like me. I'm not in charge of a property, and I'm telling you, like say your home, and I'm giving somebody else approval to move to your home. I think that would make you anti-Cardwell. I'm Pastor Cardwell, but so that instantly you have people that are had their back or hackles up as a result. And so as soon as Israel moved into the Palestine area en masse, because it wasn't just all of a sudden. They started moving in even as early as the late 1800s, 1890s. People started moving into Palestine. So it wasn't one move all of a sudden. People had been moving for a while, even in the 1930s as well. Germany, a lot, it may not be well known, but Germany had given approval for Jews to move to Palestine, or what later became known as Israel. And they had some agreements for the Jews. They had agreements with Hitler in the 1930s for them to move into what was came to be known as Israel, or the Palestine area. So it just for a little bit of history and information, but it's about 8 million, almost about 8 million Jews live in Israel, and almost about 8 million live outside of Israel. So worldwide, globally, people who identify as Jews is about 16 million, which is 0.2% of the 8 billion people that live on this planet. And probably over 8 billion, definitely by now. But so it's a small amount, but you can see that it's a very controversial nation, because you have people that agree with it and people that don't. And the people that agree are would be considered Zionists, which is they have a right to it. And the people that don't, if you look at, because there's Christian Zionists and you have people that aren't, that don't believe it. And matter of fact, a lot of people, like I said, in this country, you have about a third of people identify as Jewish or as Zionists. A third of people that are Jewish identify as Zionists, but others may not identify that as that. But that doesn't mean they're against it, And I don't have the answer for all that, so I'm going to leave it at that. I was about to go in a place where I didn't have an answer for it, so I wanted to stop. But anyway, that's what Zionist means, or Zionism is the belief that the Jews, the people that identify as Jews in this world, are deserve a homeland or state that they can call their own, and the people that are anti-Zionist are the ones that don't believe that that's their state. And I don't know if you could say they don't believe that Jews deserve a place, but I think they're saying that that's not their place, and that I guess I'm not speaking for them, but I can't. That would be from my understanding, is that they're just saying that that's not their space. As a matter of fact, the Jews were also offered a place in Russia before they moved as well. So Russia, a number of places they were looking in like Uganda, Kenya area. They were looking in America. I think they looked in South America, in Argentina, I believe, as well. And they got real close to settling on a place in either, was it New Zealand or Argentina? Or Australia, Argentina, New Zealand or Australia, and at one point as well. So it wasn't even necessarily that they were looking in the Levant. They were looking for a homeland, place to be safe from persecution and things like that, where they could set up shop, so to speak. And so this is where they ended up. And so anyway, hope that gave us a little bit of an overview, so that when you hear the term Zionist, and again, it's because there's a Mount Zion in Jerusalem. That's why that term stuck. I think it was, as a matter of fact, let me see, I had a note here that someone that wrote about that. He wrote something about Zion, and that's how that came about moving to, seeking Zion. Yeah, okay, Rabbi Z.V.I. Hirsch Kalischer wrote Seeking Zion in 1862, and that was the first written information encouraging people to want to move to Zion. Anyway, hope that gave you some information. And if I know I was all over the place, that's why you probably need to listen to this more than once, so you can grab out what you want and put it in the correct order. But thank you for listening. Appreciate you. Yah bless me. Yahweh bless you and your family. Shalom forever.